Could you start off by kind of explaining a little bit about the book and why you decided to put it out and what it shows?
Well, originally Faber asked me if I'd like to do an autobiography, and I didn't want to do that because I'm not over fond of sitting in the corner of the pub telling war stories. And I thought it'd be better to tell it through my pictures. So I've worked on this for the last 4 years really, and it's, well, ostensibly it's a history of Manchester music, but through my pictures. And I've got various writers I work with at the NME to write about the periods when they were working there to contextualise it. Yeah, that's Happy Mondays at the Maracanã in Rio. They were part of Rock in Rio Festival, and the only time they were ever together the whole week was when they were on stage. They were never together. And Sean at the time was having hypnotherapy for his heroin addiction. And a byproduct of that was that he had to have all the song lyrics written out because he'd forgotten every single song. So they were all written out meticulously and taped to the stage, and then just before they went on stage, there was a tropical storm. And I was stood on stage and I just saw all the words washing off this paper, really. So when Sean came on, he looked down at the first one confidently that he knew what he was going to do, and it was just grey mush. And he started making the words up, and then when it got to the chorus, he'd start to remember it, and then he'd sing it for every song. It was like each time he looked down at a piece of paper, it was a surprise to him that it turned to grey mush. It took me quite a while to realise what I was trying to do with it, though, because once I'd got it out of my head that it was it didn't have to be an A to Z of Manchester bands. I didn't need lots of pictures of Tim Booth from James. I didn't need Northside in there. It had to be my best pictures, and so ultimately that's what it is. And then that has a nice narrative flow to it anyway. It was Electronic's first gig they went out to open for Depeche Mode at Dodger Stadium. And Bernard, we were staying at a hotel next to this tattoo parlour, and Bernard was saying, "Go on, Johnny, go and get a tattoo, go and have a tattoo." And in the end we drew it on him with X Smith 82 to 87. And when Morrissey saw that picture, he made me take some pictures of him wearing a t-shirt with Smith's Is Dead. So I was shooting them both at the same time as well as working with each of them, and going from working with Morrissey in Japan to coming back to do some electronic stuff. And all the time Morrissey was thinking, you could see he wanted to ask me how Johnny was, but he wouldn't do it, and he'd say, "Oh, so how's Bernard Allbran?" And eventually I said, "Do you want to know how Johnny is?" So
Choosing the images for it, was that kind of interesting and fun to go back through shots you perhaps hadn't seen for a few years and to select the best ones or the most interesting?
Well, it was. I was going to say it was a bit like reading my old diaries, but I did actually have to read my old diaries to find out when I'd taken certain pictures, and it was quite a melancholic ride at times, because obviously, you know, there's been a bit of turbulence through Manchester's musical history of the last 30 years. And we've had several deaths of people I was pretty close to, and there were moments that maybe I'd rather not remember, so it's tough at times. I had to go through every set of negatives I'd ever shot, because sometimes I'd shoot things on the ends of rolls of film, and I was looking for audience shots and maybe pictures of venues and stuff, so because I wanted it to be as complete as possible. We'd been to New York a few months earlier with New Order and Mike Pickering, and she was doing a PA on the roof at Danceteria club there, and nobody was interested. There was only us watching it, and we thought, I think they almost felt sorry for her, really. She wasn't known. She just had a small hit on a dance radio station in New York. So they thought, let's invite her back to the Hacienda and she can do our club, might get a few people in. And by the time she then had a hit, so the Tube filmed it, and I did these pictures of her on the dance floor. And my assistant, when she was processing the film the next day, was developing it, and the phone rang, and she opened the door of the dark room and thought, oh, oh, that looks a bit odd.
Yeah.
And she fogged all the film, and there were 3 frames that were tightest to the spool that didn't get fogged. And I remember saying to her, well, it's only Madonna, at least it wasn't a certain ratio. And then Wilson talked to her about this a few years, well, probably about 10 years ago at a Medem or one of those events, and he said, you played my club once, and she just looked blankly at him, and he said, you know, the Hacienda in Manchester, and she just stared at him and said, I don't even know where Manchester is.
A lot of Enemy cover shots are in the book, and you obviously shot a lot for the Enemy over the years. How did you first get involved with them?
Well, when punk happened, really, Paul Morley had just been taken on by the Enemy as a writer based in the Northwest, and we used to go to gigs and see each other, and he just asked me if I wanted to photograph Howard Devoto for him, and that was it, really. My first piece for the Enemy actually was a double-page spread about Manchester, and I thought, great, this is brilliant, this is easy. You know, I'd come straight out of college and I was doing 2-page features. I didn't realise then that I'd have to start going out to live gigs and just shooting those and sitting up all night processing them,
Yeah.
and earning a £5 for it.